From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, this is a Headache Soul production. Welcome to Just the Tip-Sters, America's favorite true crime podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Morgan. With me today is my beautiful and talented co-host, Joshua Bevan.
Yo, yo, yo.
I was waiting. I was like, he's going to do something. I don't know anything could beat last week's Hey Girl, Hey.
Hey Girl, Hey.
That one I have used most of the week since I've seen you. Yeah.
We'll clip that out and turn it into your text message ringtone. Every time I text you.
Yes, because right now it's Justin Timberlake singing "I'm Bringing Sexy Back" every time you text or call me, which is really funny and better than the one I had before, because I would be in a store and the other ringtone I had for you, lots of people would turn around and stare at me. So I was like, no, you got to change it. So it's okay to use Justin Timberlake. He's sort of wholesome. So I was telling Joshua that I saw this quote, and I know it feels like all I'm doing is talking about like mental health, but I promise all I want to say is this person's quote was, "Let's talk about therapy the way we talk about the gym."
Absolutely.
I really liked that. I mean, I just feel like it's such a, like a taboo subject.
Yeah.
And I guess it depends a lot like on what part of the country you live in, or, maybe the way you were raised. But yeah, I just think we should be able to talk about
for sure
therapy.
Our health habits, our good health habits.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
I think it lines right up with gymming and nutrition and
gymming. I like that. That's great. My handwriting is so bad. I think it was on Instagram. The person's name is Ink Art. I know I'm terrible. I need to learn to write better so I can even read my own writing. But it just also brings me back to saying, if you haven't watched Shrinking, just give it
so good.
Yeah, it's terrific. It's so real. At first, I wasn't sure they were going to hit the right tone, but I think the more that goes on, I think they have. I bet you if they get renewed for a second season, it'll be even better.
Oh, yeah.
Go a little deeper. There's still, I've seen the first 7, there's 3 more left.
There's 10 total? Okay.
Yeah, 10 total. So.
That was good math.
I'm very smart. Yeah. I am very smart. So I just want to say that this was not what I wanted to talk about this week. And Joshua knows that I had something different, and it was suggested by our beloved Matt. And I did some...
Love you, Matt.
I love you more, Matt. So he suggested something that is fascinating, and then I went on kind of a deep dive, and it turns out to be even more fascinating than I thought, and some connections that Joshua and I are going to,
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. And then I mentioned it to my retired sheriff's deputy homicide detective, who said, well, one of my best friends was the lead on that case. And I was like, no, I did not know. So I may even be talking to him or getting some more information. So that is part of why I didn't want to cover that case this week. But this is not what I wanted to talk about. And it's what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Because nobody would stop messaging me. So what happened? What happened was the end of last week, a local Cincinnati news channel, WXIX, which is Fox 19, they have something they call the Crime Vault. And the journalist, I don't even want to mention her name because I don't want to sound shitty about her. I had some respect for her, and I'm not that respectful anymore because I'm trying very hard to rationalize in my head the difference between stirring up shit about a case that is completely and utterly unreal and false and keeping the case top of mind,
Oh, okay. Sure.
I feel like if there is something new to talk about, then you push it with all your might. If you're just kind of stirring up shit because of potential similarities or geography, it's just leads people. There are enough internet sleuths out there.
Right.
You don't need to push people further down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is one of those cases that's close to my heart. I've interviewed the lead detective a couple of times. Detective Coy Cox from the Boone County Sheriff's Department, his partner Tim Adams are amazing men, totally amazing men, stellar human beings, and remarkable investigators. And I know this is a very personal case to them. So Bill and Peggy Stevenson, it's coming up on the 12th anniversary of their murders being unsolved. It was at the end of May. Yeah, the end of May of 2011, Memorial Day weekend. And if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you've probably heard me either mention the case, or you've heard a couple of episodes about it, or you've heard some updates about it. Mm-hmm. So what happened is that people kept messaging me and saying, because they pimped it out 5 days before they aired it. Like the Thursday before it aired on a Tuesday night at 10.
Okay.
They were like, coming up on our Crime Vault.
Got it.
The connection between the Delphi murders and the Stevenson murders.
Oh, okay.
Even Joshua is now like rolling his eyes. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
And I'm like, oh, what the motherfuck?
Sure.
There is no connection. So I'm trying very hard to give a journalist who I am hoping has the best of intentions a wide berth, but it's getting more narrow and more narrow in my mind.
Sure.
I also despise the local Fox channel in Cincinnati. So here's the difference between the Fox channel in Cincinnati and the Fox channel in Indianapolis, which is, the closest one to the Delphi murders. It's called Fox 59 in Indianapolis.
Okay.
They covered this so-called connection, but they did it ethically and made sure everyone knew up front there's no fucking connection.
Okay.
That's the way to bring this case back up and get people talking about it without sensationalizing the murder of two young girls that has nothing to do with the murder of an older married couple.
Got it.
You could say there were things in common, like both were murdered. It's literally, that's it.
Oh, boy.
It makes me... I'm sorry. I'm trying so hard. I got so many messages this week, and I'm praying to God I wasn't rude to anyone, but it was a little bit overwhelming. And I was like, thank you. There's no connection. Thank you. I appreciate you letting me know, but there's no connection. Thank you. So trying not to be intrusive, I emailed Detective Cox and said, if I get one more email or message about the connection between Delphi and the Stevensons, I'm going to have to, I guess, purchase more bandwidth. And I'm not even sure that's the right word. Probably not, but I don't know anything about technology. So
fine, it works.
Thank you. I was like, I'm going to have to purchase like a larger plan.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I got so many messages, and I get it. It's because people are good and kind and want to help somehow solve this, right? Or these. So Richard Allen was arrested, the suspected murderer of Abby and Libby in Delphi, Indiana, in October of 2022.
October 22. Okay.
5 years after it happened in 2017. Detective Cox and Detective Adams went to northeastern Indiana in November of 2022.
Okay.
So Richard Allen was already in jail. And, they got enough evidence to, pick him up a warrant. And
sure,
these two cases have nothing to do with each other.
Okay.
You can say two people were brutally murdered, at one in an outdoor area, one in their home. It's just, okay. So here's what I'm going to go.
And that's the connection they're trying to make?
I don't know.
Like, what's the...
No.
Okay.
No. It's so slippery. Someone said, I think it was a DA when they arrested Richard Allen, there are theories that he may not have been the only killer.
Okay. So Richard Allen in Delphi, the theory is he may not have acted alone. And somebody's trying to say whoever he's with is connected to the Stevenson case somehow?
Potentially.
Okay,
it's so slippery.
That's the thin theory.
Here is here's what I think that they're trying to say, and maybe it's to drum up more interest or talking points between the two cases. It's, Richard Allen may not have acted alone because he may have purchased on the dark web information about Abby and Libby so he could meet them. Okay. Like they were catfished.
Right.
Potentially, this is just all theories at this point. And maybe the Stevensons were murdered by someone other than the person that orchestrated it. So maybe there's multiple people involved. And I honestly and maybe the person who acted out the murder for whoever planned it, maybe they live in Indiana. I mean, it's just so, I know. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read from the Fox report, and then I'm going to read from the WXIX, and then I'm going to read from the Fox report in Indianapolis, which is so much better. And then I'm going to read a tiny quote at the end of this from WRTV, the ABC channel in Indianapolis, who sums this fucking thing up. And then hopefully people will stop messaging me with their crackpot theories. And I love you all. I love you. It's the name of this podcast is just the Tip-Sters. I get it. Every tip that you give me that I think has any validity goes straight to whatever detective it's supposed to go to. And some people have said, I've already sent this information to the detectives, but I want to give it to you in case mine gets lost in the shuffle.
Sure.
And I'm happy to get information. But please stop thinking. Please stop thinking that Delphi and the Stevensons are related. Please stop thinking. Okay. I'm so angry right now. I'm so angry. Okay. WXIX. On Tuesday at 10 from their crime vault. One of Boone County's most horrific killings remains unsolved nearly 12 years later, but the detectives working the Stevenson case are leaving no stone unturned. That might be the most completely honest sentence in this whole bullshittery. In recent months, their investigation has even led them to Indiana to look into a possible connection to the highly publicized Delphi double murders. Detective Coy Cox and his partner Tim Adams make up Boone County Sheriff's Office cold case unit, but they say Bill and Peggy's case is far from cold. The Stevensons were both 74 when they were found dead inside their home May 29th of 2011. I'm going to say something here. There's a couple of sentences that I think might be important. A concerned family member found them when they did not show up for church. It was a very complex, brutal, disturbing crime scene. We think it was, a very surprise attack, Cox said. There was some blunt force trauma. Ooh. Now, that's all he's willing to say. But I believe it's out there that there was also sharp force trauma.
Oh, okay.
There was not one cause of death.
Oh, okay.
The manner of death is homicide. The cause of death was probably several things.
Wow.
Right. When Cox and Adams were sent to the scene that day, they discovered the house had been altered and bodies had been staged. Whoever killed the couple had not taken off right away. This is very interesting to me. There were things that were done to their bodies that were horrific. They changed several things in the scene, which is really, really unusual for any murder scene anywhere in the country or the world. There was quite a bit of time that the perpetrators, the killers, he's saying plural, stayed in the residence or felt comfortable coming back to the scene. In general, detectives believe that kind of behavior points to a suspect who knows the victims.
Okay.
Bill and Peggy Stevenson were loved by many people. They were amazing people, good Christian people. They wanted to share their faith and their love with the community, which they did. So Bill and Peggy's daughter, Beth, is an amazing advocate for her parents and for murdered victims in the entire state of Kentucky. This is the part that makes me want to cry. And this was a little piece of information she said that made me love Peggy even more. She said it's pretty bad that somebody could stay, that they could stage something and stay with bodies like that, for multiple hours. It's pretty sick. You're constantly looking over your shoulder, and just up until 3 years ago, my front blinds were never opened. Oh, just within the last 3 years, I've been able to sit with the blinds open. That is so heartbreaking and also so understandable.
Oh, sure, of course.
When you don't know who did it.
Right.
You're both of your parents who were beloved are murdered in a terrible way, you would think, obviously, they're coming after me.
Right.
Beth described her parents as devoted churchgoers, a couple who loved their big family. Beth called her mother Peggy the quiet one, and she was an experienced and talented musician. So I know I've mentioned this 174 times. Bill was a deacon at their church and had a truck stop ministry for truckers who were on the road and didn't have their home church. And Peggy played the organ at church. This is the part that just got me. Beth, their daughter, said, Mom played for many weddings, funerals, played for a couple of the grandkids' weddings. She just loved playing the organ and the piano. The fact that she was like the family musician and played for her kids' and grandkids' weddings just got me. Wow. So this is another leap to try and make a connection. The connection to the community became a possible lead for the detectives. Over the years, they've interviewed quite a few truck drivers. Now, I'm going to say this podcast helped at one point with that. I think it may have been 2020 when we interviewed Detective Cox. And he said they got what he called 3 viable tips from a couple of truck drivers. There is a video from the truck stop of a few days before the murders, a truck driver pounding on the little chapel door, yelling for Bill.
In an angry way or distressed way? Okay.
Yeah. And they were like, look, maybe, Bill parked in front of his truck or, whatever. So that was interesting. I don't honestly know that it's led to any. I know they tracked down, they say 2 now, truck drivers, and they have obtained DNA. Neither of them were uncooperative.
Got it.
So Detective Cox says, early on in the investigation, we had information that someone had been at the truck stop looking for Bill pretty aggressively, banging on the door to the chapel, asking if anyone had seen him. There are truckers they have ruled out, while some are still on their radar. And then here's another, red herring. Bill and Peggy had a nephew named Stevie Stevenson. His name is Charles Stevie Stevenson. And he was a bottom feeder who killed a woman in her home in Indiana with a skillet and a pepper mill because she was going to cut him off. I know. And had ordered a pizza from Pizza Hut, and his name and credit card were on the box.
Jeez.
Yeah. He's in prison for her murder. And of course, when you have a family member who's murdered, you think, oh, he's the one who may have, and they vetted. I'm going to keep reading, but it was a completely different thing. The woman that he murdered was kind of his sugar mama, and she was going to cut him off, and he got angry and killed her.
Got it.
He had borrowed money from family members. I do not know that he'd borrowed any money from Bill and Peggy, but he had borrowed money from an elder relative, I believe another aunt, which would have been, Bill's sister. So, okay. Detective Cox said they've actually spoken to Charles Stevie Stevenson recently. He's currently serving a life sentence in prison for beating this Indiana woman to death. We're pretty comfortable that that's in a good place. There's no final statement on there. It isn't that he's been cleared, but we certainly have vetted him in every way possible.
Okay.
I believe he was actually even out of town when Bill and Peggy were murdered. It would have been an impossibility because they have it narrowed down to a pretty short window. One of the largest developments in the case could still bring them the break that they need to close it. Cox said they do have an unknown DNA profile. We don't know who the DNA belongs to. It was found at our crime scene, he said. So it's a complex DNA profile. So genetic genealogy is not an option right now. So they're waiting on results from the Kentucky State Lab to see if the DNA from either of the 2 truck drivers that they have on their radar matches the unknown profile. We have 2 gentlemen that are in the trucking profession that we have collected DNA from, and we're awaiting a response back from the Kentucky State Police Lab. In November of 2022, a tip led them to Indiana. We had received some information from an individual regarding the Delphi murders in Indiana, and they had said, For all of these reasons, we believe it may be the same person that was involved in the Stevenson case. Right away, the detectives say they started looking into possible connection between Bill and Peggy's 2011 murder and the murders of Abby Williams and Liberty German in Delphi, Indiana in 2017. There's things that will make you really interested in a case simply more than just somebody saying, hey, for this reason, I think this person's involved. But we had a little piece of information that really made us think the case became significantly more interesting. So they end up going to northwestern Indiana to speak to a truck driver and talk about this specific piece of information. I'm not going to tell you what that item was, Cox said. We've recently been in the northern part of Indiana investigating this guy, following him around, looking for things, collecting all the information and evidence we would need to at least vet him as best as possible.
Okay.
He was cooperative. We were able to go down that path with him, and he articulated a good reason why the item that they were interested in existed. Cox said what they found was sent to the Indiana State Police, since that is the agency handling Abby and Libby's murder case. Okay. To be clear, here's where we get to the meat. Cox said their investigation into a potential link between the two cases did not include Richard Allen. When Boone County detectives were in Delphi, Allen was already in jail, where he had been since October of 2022, accused of the murders of Abby and Libby. We received information from Indiana as it related to some persons, and we forwarded that to Indiana State Police. We did not send them information that led to the arrest of Richard Allen. We sent them information that may have had some parallel consistencies with where they are at the case right now. Detective Cox says, I know that sounds a little cloak and dagger, but I'm just sorry we can't get into that further. The developments have Cox feeling hopeful. As someone who's been on the case since day one, it feels personal. It's hard. This is on my watch. This is my case. I want to solve it. I don't want to say it's more special, but it's definitely a very special case, and I'd really like it to get solved, as we would all of them, obviously. But yeah, this one has a little extra tug. Detective Cox won't even retire until this case is solved.
Yeah, wow.
And this is a man who has devoted his life to catching the bad guy, and he could retire, and he won't.
Wow.
Bill and Peggy's daughter, Beth, says, we're just still hopeful. We're hopeful that they'll come up with the right evidence that they need, and a confession would be great. But we're still hopeful that they'll solve it. Somebody deserves to pay for what they did. When talking about the latest leads, Detective Cox said they have not ruled anything or anyone out. Even though some leads do not look likely, they have not eliminated anything completely. He said they've tried very many things, as we know, including the VDOC Society, Othram Labs. He said including talking to mediums. He confirmed that they do know the Stevenson's exact time of death because of a medical device that was inside one of them.
Oh, okay.
And that could help them pinpoint the killer. Cox would not say whether they have specific suspects or people of interest, but he believes whoever did it committed other crimes. Now, something he says, this is from Detective Cox. The crime scene was initially staged, changed, and moved and altered. We know from a post-mortem injury that the killer or killers remained on the scene or came back to the scene anywhere from at least 3 hours after the murders up to 8 hours.
Oh, wow.
He's never said that before that I'm aware of.
Wow.
And I just want you to hold on to that.
Yeah.
We knew 3 hours because of some information about hearing something, or maybe it was the code. Someone had the code to get into the condo complex.
Oh, got it. Okay.
There were some things heard, and we also know the exact time of death because of the medical
pacemaker
device
or whatever.
Yeah. So they were able to change something in every room of the residence to where we actually had a scene that was not a crime scene, but it was a scene that the killers wanted us to find. There's also scuttlebutt that I don't know is true, that there was a message left from the killer.
A message in the crime scene?
Mm-hmm.
Like a direct actual message?
Yeah, I don't know if that means written or...
Okay.
Yeah. So Detective Cox describes the cause of death as blunt force trauma, which, yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about the Fox 59 coverage. They're really smart. They obtained records, that you can get if you're a really good investigator, unlike the Fox 19. They obtained records with the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, and Carroll County is where Delphi is.
Okay.
So Richard Allen had a call to his home on January 18th of 2015 at 3:30 a.m., where his wife, Kathy, called 911 on a domestic violence call.
Got it.
When the officers arrived, they found Richard was drunk. He was then taken to the hospital by his wife for evaluation. There was no details on who called 911 or what the nature of the domestic incident was, along with information that the treatment he got at the hospital, but nothing else was, reported. Okay. So there wasn't like an arrest but.
Got it.
Okay. So this is the difference between Fox 19 and Fox 59. Fox 59 is like succinct and puts in the really important information. A motion reveals prosecutors' reasons for sealing the court documents in the Delphi murder. Fox 59 says, this led Coy Cox to travel to the Fort Wayne area to interview a truck driver who had a connection to Bill Stevenson. Cox said that man was fully cooperative. Based on what they have right now, Cox said he doesn't see a connection with the Delphi murders. Okay. However, he admits both have rare similarities in their crime scenes. A lot of things like staging multiple victims, spending time post-mortem, a lot of those things make these kinds of cases the 1% kind of cases that you see.
Sure. Okay.
So he says that, but he's also, and I have another quote that I will say that just brings me a lot of joy that I hope people understand why this shouldn't be this way. Cox makes it clear he does not believe Richard Allen, the man accused in the Delphi murders, had anything to do with the Stevenson's murders. However, one of Allen's first court hearings, Carroll County prosecutor Nicholas McClelland said, "There's good reason to believe Allen is not the only one involved." Mm-hmm. Could one of those other people have a connection to the Stevenson case? That's something Cox and his partner continue to investigate. Cox said he has shared all the information he's gathered with the Indiana State Police. Indiana State Police wouldn't comment on this story because of the gag order imposed on the Richard Allen case. The detective has said since this information has come to light in his office, they've received numerous tips, and he hopes that people will continue to provide any information they have. I'm going to read you the phone number where you can contact them and remind people that there's a $50,000 reward put up by the Stevenson family. Mm-hmm. And I'm also going to tell you this, that when you hear about a reward for the arrest and conviction of someone, I didn't know how that happened. Most of the time I thought it was donations from the city or from, private individuals.
Yeah, how does that happen?
Well, I'll tell you. After Detective Cox was on this podcast, they got a lot of money. I'm sorry. They got a lot of tips. And what had happened at the beginning, they had put $100,000 up the family and put a time on it, like within 6 months. If you respond within 6 months.
Sure. And
no one did. And then they sort of let that go. And here all these years later, so let's say 2.5 years ago when he was on the podcast and I interviewed him, I think it was August of 2020.
Okay.
The family has to liquidate assets and put the money in an escrow account.
Okay.
You can't just say, I'm offering a $50,000 reward. You have to show that you have it.
Sure.
And it can't be touched. A specific financial institution has to manage it or watch it. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Sure.
And the three kids, Bill and Peggy's kids, got together and contributed this amount of money, and it's still a $50,000 reward. And that's money they can't touch.
Wow.
Unless they decide to rescind the offer. But so far they haven't. So I will give you the phone number, which I have. But I also want to read this because this is good reporting and it's so succinct and perfect. It's from WRTV ABC in Indianapolis. I can tell you at this point in time, we do not see a connection. When we initially looked at it, we really didn't see the Stevenson part of what was being articulated to us. We certainly appreciate the information coming in. We appreciate the tips and we investigate all of those. So we encourage those, but we really didn't make the same connection that the tipster made in that case.
Yeah, okay.
So I feel like this was a whole lot of brouhaha.
Sure. The connection is super thin.
Right.
But it sounds like there's something. Detective Cox followed this item. So there's this item, he said. So something, I feel like something's going to happen soon, right? Like this is going to lead. This is a good lead.
I can hope so. The belief is that one person organized this attack on Bill and Peggy Stevenson and another person acted it out. Another person or persons.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just going to tell you, I got a weird comment on our YouTube channel about another case we had done, a man named Tom Biedenharn, who was murdered in southern Indiana, but had connections to Kentucky and Ohio.
Okay.
And he was murdered in his home, and I think we probably know what happened and why. It was probably a robbery gone bad. He did a lot of work at like homeless shelters, and it's sort of theorized that, one or two of those people may have surprised attacked him.
Oh, okay.
It was on a holiday weekend, like the Stevensons. I mean, you can always find a connection, right?
Sure.
So this person said, as a comment on the YouTube channel, did Tom Biedenharn ever come into contact with the name of a coach? Tom was a big basketball star at the University of Cincinnati. And I was like, in my mind, the fact that Tom was, a senior citizen and Bill and Peggy were senior citizens, it's just, there's not a connection. This person is trying to connect Tom Biedenharn's murder, the Delphi murder, and the Stevenson murder.
Oh my gosh. All right.
Right. So I'm going to tell you this. And I'm sorry to say it like this because I don't want to leave everyone out in the cold and in the dark, but I just have to say it like this because I can't say more. I sent that information late last night to Detective Cox and said, I don't know what this person's talking about, but at least you have their name. Okay. And if you need, because I have sent in numerous tips that we've gotten before, and he has run each one of them down.
Right.
He said, okay, I need to know everything you know about this person, and gave me a name.
About the YouTube?
Yeah, no.
Oh, about a completely different person?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I need to know who they are, is what he said.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, sir, you're the detective. I host a podcast. I have a good voice and an obsession. I am not you. So it's always humbling and flattering when detectives ask me for information.
For sure.
I always think of myself as backup. Like they know.
Right.
But maybe they want me to be their street team. Yeah. Okay. Ask some weirdos questions or something.
Sure.
So I'm not sure how to answer him, but I've already started compiling information on this individual. And you know me, I just asked you a couple of tech questions because I don't know fuck about shit.
Right.
So I like what you're saying. I like that you're saying this may shake some shit loose in the trees. And maybe there'll be something. I'm going to tell you, I believe there is zero connection between one or more persons who killed Libby and Abby and one or more persons who killed Bill and Peggy. I don't believe it was for the same reason, the same motive. Maybe there were similarities in the, cause of death.
Right.
I just don't, staging bodies. And there was another theory that maybe a souvenir was taken from Abby and Libby. That's a very unique and signature, as well as I have no idea, because of the way that Bill and Peggy's condo was left, if they even know if something was taken.
Oh, got it.
Things were moved and changed so dramatically.
Right.
Who knows if something small could have been taken as a souvenir by some sick fuck.
Right.
So, there's rumors that the Delphi killer, allegedly, Richard Allen, took a souvenir. I don't know if that was ever found, if it's been looked for, if nothing's been confirmed as far as I know, and they're keeping it close to the vest, which I get.
Right.
Don't know that anything was taken from Bill and Peggy's home because of the way it was left. Pretty sure I can tell you things were taken from Tom Biedenharn's house because it was a robbery.
Oh, okay.
Oops. Yeah, that's what I think. I interviewed the detectives there too, and they're remarkable human beings. And just to let you know, they're in touch with the Boone County Sheriff's Department about other things, other connections. But I'm going to say, and maybe I'm going to be proven wrong, I don't think there's a tie. I think there might be similarities, but I just don't think there's a tie of any note. And while it makes me angry that Fox 19, promoted this for 5 days before they ran it,
right.
When I emailed Detective Cox and said, look, if I get one more message, my brain's going to explode. And he said, well, the story was pretty generic.
Yeah.
I think that says it all.
Yeah. And like you were saying, any spotlight is going to help.
I hope. That's the only thing I can find that's good in this. But to me, don't fucking open your yap unless you have a reason to open your yap. We can all talk about the case, but don't, because I feel like it might, I'm trying not to be like Bitterman table for one. Bitterman table for one. I feel like it might attract the wrong element.
Sure. And I mean, your anger is justified. I mean, this is very
thank you,
gravedigger kind of gross.
Thank you.
Hey, just to drum up.
I appreciate
something for views or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, hopefully this does result in moving a little bit forward. It really sounds like Detective Cox has a way bigger handle, and it kind of sounds like he's playing the orchestra a little bit with exactly what he's flinging out.
You're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah.
Nothing gets by you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you completely and utterly. And I hold him in the highest esteem. I really do. He and his partner, Tim Adams, are, who's the quiet one. Coy is the face of the case.
Got it.
And Tim doesn't talk. When I've been on speakerphone conversations with them, I didn't even know Tim was in the room.
Oh, okay.
And when I met them in person, Tim is just this lovely man.
Cool.
We had lunch and it was a lovely thing. I'm going to call him the handler, because Coy Cox, his brain works so fast and just goes everywhere. And Tim is, Coy one time said, Tim, it's your job to not, he said something out loud to me that he probably shouldn't have.
Oh, oops.
And I whipped my head around and he goes, oh, I forgot you're not a cop, which is a huge compliment, you know?
Totally.
And he goes, and he turns to Tim and he goes, Tim, it's your job to tell me to keep my mouth shut. So I think Tim has his hands full, keeping Coy on a short leash.
Cool.
But I also know what a brilliant brain that is. And if there's any way that this case can be solved, until science catches up and that DNA profile can be, figured out,
sure,
he's going to find it.
Cool.
So here we go. If you know anything about the murders of Bill and Peggy Stevenson, back in May of 2011, there's a $50,000 reward, and I hope that would not be what you use as a motivation. Please call the Boone County Sheriff's Department at 859-334-2175. And as always, you can call us at 832-Tip-Sters. That's 832-847-7837. You can email us at jttipsters@gmail.com, and you can find us on any of the social media platforms. I always forget to mention YouTube, but that seems to be a viable thing right now. At JT Tipsters on Instagram, JT Tipsters Pod on Twitter, and you can find us on YouTube, and more cowbell.
If you would like to support this podcast and get early access and other cool murderous swag, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.